Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to Big Hero News, the summer series, some best ofs over the last 12 months or so. So good to be with you. I hope you're having a good break. Hope you're enjoying where you are. Hope you're safe and well and dry and warm and anything else that makes you feel good about you. Thanks for being with us through this period. I've been enjoying seeing all the comments that have been popping up on the videos. I've had a bit of a look here and there. This is a pre-recorded as live conversation with some of our best ofs, and it is currently, as you're watching, this Wednesday, the 3rd of January. Interesting show tonight, actually, for you to have a check out. We're going to be having a chat with Byron C Clark on how do we address the half-truth aspect of conspiracy theories. Because within a lot of conspiracy theories, there is a half-truth a lot of the time, and then they move on and they turn it into lunacy, absolute lunacy. Feature conversation tonight is from about maybe January or February of this year, when David Slack came on to have a chat with us about the resignation of Jacinda Ardern. That'll be our feature interview of tonight. And also poor old Kerre Woodham, all confused as to why prior to the election, New Zealanders didn't trust Christopher Luxon. So we'll be having a look at that clip as well. Thanks for being with us. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Happy to have you along for the BHN Summer Series. Let's get into it. Ethan, thanks for the $20. We appreciate it. I have a mate who started off rightly being angry at the capitalist/corporate system we all live under, but very soon went down the rabbit hole of conspiracy. Conspiracy. How do we address the half-truth aspect of certain conspiracy? Great question.
Yeah. It is a great question, because I do address the issue of people from the left getting involved in this stuff a little bit in the book. I mean, it's primarily a book about the far right, but I think if your politics are limited to a sort of populist, the people versus the elite, then there's a real possibility of being on the political left, being that first step into that conspiracy theory world. One of the things I did much earlier than this book, years ago, I did an oral history of Occupy Christchurch, our local offshoot of Occupy Wall Street, and one of the big slogans of the Occupy movement was, we are the 99%. It was, it's us, the people, against you, the 1%, the elites. And I think that when the far right is pushing this same idea that, the small group of elites are trying to reshape the world, then, people who might have been drawn into like left-wing populism years ago can say like, yeah, I'm on board with that. And then they can take on some of the other ideas. I think the solution to that, probably if you're someone on the political left, is making sure that people don't stop at the people power, us versus the elites, we are the 99%, but maybe educate themselves more to understanding, how capitalism works. Because, there's a half truth in there that there's, elites, but it's not really that simple. I mean, the small group of billionaires don't actually, control all government policy. I mean, your landlord who owns 2 properties, or your employer who employs 6 people, are the ones who are voting for the centre right parties. It's not, the world's billionaires who probably have enough money that they aren't even participating that much in politics. So having a more grounded and reasonable understanding of capitalism and classes is probably one of the ways there, and understanding how social change happens and what actual collective organization is, through like organized labor and things, rather than just big populist protests. Not that there isn't a place for that. I don't have a pre-prepared syllabus for things you can read or study, but there's I mentioned I used to do a YouTube channel a few years ago now. It's kind of still going, but there was this whole movement, BreadTube, which was often a lot of quite highly educated people putting out this kind of intellectual left-wing content in a very accessible format. So there's ways to self-educate and collectively educate and groups and things that I think can give people a solid grounding, that if they do have legitimate concerns about the world's rich or whatever, they can then not end up on a pathway to one of these conspiracy rabbit holes, but maybe end up instead doing something more productive or
BreadTube
improving
was
the world.
sort of the response to, what do they call themselves? The intellectual dark web, Jordan
Yeah,
Peterson, and
yeah,
it was sort of the counterpoint to that a little bit, wasn't it? So
definitely, yeah.
hey, welcome back, whānau. Hope you're enjoying the summer series, Big Hearing News. Wanted to say a very quick yet very humble and honest thanks to all of our patrons. Obviously, this is a pre-record. At the time of pre-recording this conversation, these were our patrons that we had up on the billboard. Executive producers are Luce and Meow Collective, producer Cookie, Nick and Calfrin, senior producers Andrew Winnington, Anna Mills, super patrons Simple Reality, Rob Burney, Pat Sellers, Gareth Hodson, Lurchie, Michael Tilliard, Paul Christensen, Chris Rowley, the Penn Hay family, and Gold. Ding, always believe in you. Yeah, sorry about that. And also, of course, all our other beautiful people who help us do what we do. If you are interested at all in becoming a patron, it's very simple to do. Help us keep making what we're making. All you need to do is go to patreon.com/Big Hearing News. Patreon.com/Big Hearing News will give you all you need to know about supporting the work that we're doing. And coming up to 2024, we are going to be maybe not changing up, but probably the word is we're going to be honoring a bit more the people who have come on board to be patrons, like these people are here. In the past, we've been giving you guys a bunch of stuff. Some people have got merch from the levels. People have got access to us in weekends when we do a monthly kind of catch up, and also early release of clips, etc. We are going to look at doing more with the patrons and offering more to you through 2024 as a way of honoring what you've put into us and to say thanks as well. So if you're not a patron already, I'd love you to be on board. Patreon.com/Big Hearing News. Other than that, we'll get into more details as to what is going to happen with the patrons this year when we come back from our holiday. But speaking of holiday, it's Big Hearing News. It's the summer series. Let's continue. Joining us right now, writer and commentator David Slack. David, good evening to you.
Hey, Pat, long time
well,
no chat.
Yeah, I was just thinking the
COVID
same
kept
thing.
me away from you.
Yeah, how you doing? Well, I know it was a pretty rough run for you at COVID. You okay now?
Yeah, it was frustrating. I ducked it until about Labour weekend last year, and then put myself on the Paxlovid right away, and that worked pretty well. Except that then I got what about 1 in 10 people get, which is the Paxlovid rebound.
Yeah, the bounce back.
Yeah, and if that happens, it means that your immune system turns up to do the rear guard action because the Paxlovid didn't clear it all out and doesn't quite know where the keys are and where the car is in the building. And so it all takes a while. And so I just went for week after week after week, just sort of decked, and it was pretty frustrating. And still now I've got this numb tongue that kind of tells me that things aren't quite right. So
is it good that you're a writer, Danny? So when the numb gets a bit numb, it doesn't affect you that much. Just completely off target. If you could go back again, because the Paxlovid is recommended for some people. If you could look back again, would you have still gone with that, or would you have taken your chances more on just the COVID?
Yeah, because I've got a sort of a heart condition. When I say that, I mean 30 years ago I had a couple of heart attacks, and so I have to be kind of careful. I'm kind of mindful that if the ball bounces wrong, it can get a bit catastrophic, and that's the whole idea of Paxlovid, that you just remove the possibility of the extreme adverse outcome from the calculation. So yeah, I'd probably do it again, but I don't know. I might actually weigh it a bit next time.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting those decisions we make. Like I got it in December for the first time, but I just had my booster, and I kind of I flew through it pretty well. Like I was back doing the show kind of maybe 3 nights after I got it. There were some things I had exhaustion and I had spinning heads and stuff, but I was mostly okay. And I put it to, and I wonder if I hadn't had that booster, would I have? Because that means my immunity this year was like, go. But we can't tell this. But look, anyway, let's not get distracted. There's enough for you and I to get distracted about.
Today was a big day.
It was a big day. I was actually thinking, the amount that I've worked in radio when there's been massive stories, I'm like, today is one of those days.
Yeah.
And it was massive. And like, I know most people don't believe this, but the biggest news of the day was the sun was out in Dunedin. No, that wasn't that was the second biggest news story. It was the second biggest news story.
Yeah.
So why don't you just, I mean, for people who don't know, you have worked as a speechwriter for Jeffrey Palmer and for Jim Bolger, so both sides of the kind of house, I guess you'd say. So you've been, I'm interested to get your intake as well. You've been behind the closed doors before, I don't know if these kinds of speeches, but some kinds of speeches have been delivered. So we'd love to get your input on what we saw today, but also you're an astute political commentator on what this means for New Zealand. The floor is yours, sir.
Sure. One interesting point she used in there was that people always, when this happens, and obviously this was sort of alluding to John Key in particular, people say, well, but what's the real reason? And she said, what I've just told you, that's the real reason. And I both accept that, but also wonder if nonetheless what she has described minimizes what went into that calculation. And by that I mean that the vitriol, the hate, the death threats, the unrelenting hostility that has developed over these last year in particular, because it was about this time last year that the occupation was getting going.
Yeah.
That has to wear on anybody. She has real steel, but she also has a great deal of humanity and empathy, and all of those things add up to finding that pretty tough. And also, you would have to be worried about your personal safety. You know, there is a level of menace attaches to this that is really worrisome. And when you've got a young child to consider in that calculation as well, I mean, that's really meaningful. So, you know, I think when she talks about not having much left in the tank, I absolutely believe that. I thought more than once last year looking at her, God, I couldn't blame you if you wanted to pull the pin on this. And, you know, it really has been hugely demanding.
What you're describing about the tank, as you're describing it, I'm thinking, you know, I mean, I spend a lot of time in Northland, so understand the concept of conserving water in a tank, right? And you can use up the water in the tank for good, solid, real, wholesome purposes like showers and drinking water and that kind of stuff. Or you can get someone with a machete come and take to your tank, you know, or with guns to blow holes in the side of your tank. That will also empty the water, but so much harder to refill out. And what you're describing is someone, you know, a group, a feeling has attacked that tank to empty it, as opposed to maybe natural attrition, which maybe most politicians hit at some stage.
No, that's absolutely true. And actually, I was just lining one thing up to quote to you, but I'm just going to jump to another one too that somebody shared with me today. That this, you know, this is here. This is just quoting somebody who texted me, and it might all be imagined, but the person who supplied it is extremely reliable. And if they providing this,
have we got a scoop? Have we? Are you giving us a scoop? Are you?
No,
my unknown source.
It's a reliable unnamed source, but he's saying that in Tairua, and I presume this was over the holidays. Doesn't really matter when it was anyway. That they saw a woman telling Jacinda, how rough are you with the language here? Shall I go full noise?
Go full noise.
Okay, this is what this woman said to Jacinda in a store in Tairua. Fuck you! You ruined my life. You cunt. Fuck off, horseface. This was in a local shop in front of Neve. In front of Neve, you know. Yeah. It's unconscionable, the readiness of people to throw unbelievable invective at somebody who has been doing what, and I'll now go to the thing that I had lined up before that I was going to share with you that I wrote in the newsletter today, because I think that this is the essence of what I think is unfair, that essentially the people who have given this the least thought and made the most noise have kind of prevailed here. And it is I had a character saying, "I still can't get over how fast people managed to forget what was at stake and how decent a job the government did of getting us through. And then all of a sudden, every inconvenience gets made into a political travesty."
Yeah.
And we seem to have managed to so swiftly forget how uncertain it was in those first few weeks. And you and I, we talked around that point about it, about just how unsure it all looked. And we didn't know. None of us knew. We didn't have a bloody clue. And the assurance of the money sustaining everybody to keep things on an even keel was hugely meaningful. The way in which and we talked about this before we came on air indirectly, the messaging they had couldn't have been clearer and was really helpful.
At that time, yeah.
At that time was really valuable. And it meant that the sense that everybody might have otherwise had that there was no telling where this thing would go. And let's not forget that either. We didn't know much about that virus at that point. Was it going to escalate? Was it going to start cutting people down? Were people going to die, in the way they did in 1918? And so all of that, they managed so well. But in the calculation, it meant that you were choosing least bad option. And that meant that certain things were, unpalatable options, and that meant not being able to come and go from this country in the way that we take for granted. But it amounted not to ruining your life, as that person was alleging in the shop in Tairoa to Jacinda Ardern. It meant making things difficult so that you had to adjust, and making it possible for you to adjust. This ruining your life, ruining my life shit, I've heard many times now from people, and it is histrionic, and it's unfair, and it's certainly unreasonable to say that Jacinda did this to me.
It's also the victim card, though. And like, one of the things that frustrates me most about this whole, apartheid argument around this is, if you're black in South Africa, you don't have a fucking choice. You have a choice to whether you were going to be excluded from society via mandates or not. So there's no victims in this classroom, as Michelle Pfeiffer said in Dangerous Minds. There's no fucking victims in this classroom.
Right.
If you want to put your opinion on dodgy science above what's being said, fine. That's the choice you make. There's no victims in this classroom. So yeah, those people, you have ruined my life. It's like, I'm a victim. I had no autonomy. Yes, you did. You had all the autonomy. I had a teacher on who lost their job, and she said, I said, well, it's a choice, and she says, no, they're not. They're forcing it. So I said to her, oh, really? So when are you getting your vaccine? And she says, well, I'm not. And I'm like, because it's not a choice. Yeah, because you're choosing not to get it. So I don't buy any of that. But like, I was thinking as well, what she said today, which we played the full thing earlier, it is, let's just take it as true. But is it true because she's come to the end, or is it true because those machetes have been attacking the water tank? So in other words, has she's been driven to this part to have to get out? So even though it is truthful that she's leaving on her terms, if it wasn't for the histrionics in society, she probably, who knows, we know sliding doors, but wouldn't be. And it's just made me think, what that means moving forward, which I'd like to actually, is there anything you want to share with us about delivering those messages? As I said, speechwriter for Palmer and Bolger, what happens behind the scenes when you have to deliver, and you may have not been involved with exactly this, but these sort of earth-shattering, news-breaking events, what happens? How is that delivered? How do you go through the process of getting the wording right and stuff? Share us something on that.
When I think about it now, at the point that Geoffrey Palmer was leaving, he was just saying all of that himself. Nobody was scripting anything,
right? Because
actually, the calculations are all done. Then there isn't, you're not sort of setting one thing off against another. And I might be mistaken about this. And full disclosure, I should say that I have been involved once or twice in this term, helping with messaging for this Prime Minister too. But only a little bits on a time or on one or two occasions.
I hope you weren't involved with the UN one where she said that free speech could be a weapon of war, because that was another time they screwed up their messaging. Please tell me you weren't involved with that, David. No.
Not involved, yeah.
Oh, good.
But the impression I got from that involvement was that she has very clear ideas, as do many political orators. And it's not so much that they don't have a clear idea about messaging, it's more that they're looking for fresh ideas that might just make things shine a bit more. But they've got fundamentally they know where they're wanting to take it. And so, you know, anything you heard today, I would say was you know, a full expression of what she had been thinking and where she was taking it. And we know this about her messaging too, that she's always found a way to present it in a way that doesn't unduly blame anybody, do anybody down. It might be implicit in it, but she doesn't unduly take a swing when that's not necessary, and she also, I think, you know, knows that people will draw their conclusions anyway. It's not, you don't need to say everything for people to get the point. And I think the truth is that it's both of those things. It is run out of tank, but it's also, as you say, somebody has taken a fucking machete to the tank, so the water's come out faster. We're mixing metaphors and hydrocarbons here, but you know what I mean. It's nobody could blame her for saying at this point this would be the right thing to do. And furthermore, and she hasn't said this, but you have to figure that this was on her mind, that her presence would have been extremely divisive in this election campaign. This would have been a horrible election campaign with everybody who hates her throwing themselves at her, and possibly a very dangerous one. You know, you had an election in the UK where a candidate died, was attacked and murdered. You know, this happens in Westminster democracies. And so, well, sure as fuck happens now. And as we saw in Christchurch, it happens with absolutely murderous intent. So there was that danger too. But, you know, from a strategic point of view, this takes something very inflammatory out of the equation and leaves Labour to fight on. Sure, reduced kind of firepower in a certain sense. You know, she had star power like none other, but also she had become an enmity magnet. So do these, you know, where does that calculation take you? Maybe.
Well, this is exactly the next conversation that's now going to fill up the next 7 days of Talkback. Who is next? Now, News Hub has come out. I'm not picking on News Hub because that's just the headline that's come out. Michael Wood, Chris Hipkins, and Kerre Allen. I think they've got it wrong. Michael Wood, I think possibly is of those three is my top choice, but they're missing who the person should be. Now, you and I started talking about Kerre Allen beforehand. You were thinking that Kerre Allen could be a choice. Go and give us your rationale before I make myself look like the most misogynistic, patriarchal piece of shit in the land.
By all means. What I have in mind in particular was and now I've forgotten the civil defence disaster that this actually involved. Was it the volcano? No. Look, it's secondary. Whichever disaster it was, it ran all day, and she was suddenly there, fronting and being compelling in her reassuring and capable presence. I think that she has a means of communicating right across the spectrum of our society in a way that few politicians do. I think she's very quick. She's very sharp. She has all the humanity that the current Prime Minister does. I think and I also think she has the potential to present further dimension that you don't see yet when she steps up in exactly the same way that Jacinda did once she took over from Andrew Little.
Yeah.
I know you're going to disagree with a great deal of this, but I think she's got a rare quality, and that can be enough to overcome the dimension that I know you're concerned about, which is that we've got a bunch of misogynistic conservative middle New Zealanders who will say, no, fuck that, I'm not voting for another woman, I want a man.
Well, okay, so thanks for throwing me under the bus.
Let me throw one more thing in.
Okay, sure.
How cool would it be for Marnie Dunlop to be the first lady? That's as cool as Hillary Clinton, man.
I tell you something, and I'm just looking at it from a numbers point of view. If they want to win this year, Kerry Allen is the wrong choice for all those horrible reasons you've just said, but those are still reasons. There are a group of people who are moving away from Labour. There are some of them that are, unfortunately, that bloody woman. And if you want to win this year, not my personal position, but Kerry Allen is the wrong person, I think. Now, if you're looking at 2026 and beyond, and you are going to say, yep, we're just going to take this hit and we're going to end up on 28% and we're going to move for the next one and National's going to win, sure, fine, if that's the plan that they go with. Tell you, and I thought the two people that would be, I think Michael Wood is up there, one of the they suggested. Now, as I say this out loud, I was a little bit worried that I don't think he's announced that he's going to resign. Imagine if the person I'm about to say has said he's one of those ones that are going to skip out. I don't think it is. As we look at the actual the list, I mean, you go through the list and it gets pretty. He said Kelvin Davis is no. Grant Robertson said no. Jacinda's going, and then you look at some people who have been there for a while. David Parker, Little's had a crack. Hipkins, they've touted. I don't think so. I reckon, especially if you want to get that group of people, and you see where I'm stopping and slowing down.
Oh God, are you going to Kieran McNulty? Because he said he won't.
I think Kieran McNulty is the guy.
Yeah, no, he has said he won't.
I think Kieran McNulty is the guy. Well, man, we'll see what happens after 7 days.
Yeah.
I reckon he pitches. Remember, I'm just talking about winning this year. He pitches to provincial New Zealand like pretty much no one else can.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's needed in the Labour Party leadership if they want to win this year. Because be it good, bad, or indifferent, the groundswells of this world have been able to turn a sector of that society against Labour. Maybe they always were, but putting a provincial ute driving bloke in there for this year is messaging that I think would help them. So my tick is for Kieran McNulty. He's the guy. He's the guy.
He's a whole lot more quick,
no baggage,
and informed than Christopher Luxon. And that's the other thing to think about here. Once it's an election, it's not it's not a contest between whoever the new leader is and the one they've replaced.
Yep.
It's between them and Luxon.
Yeah.
How do they look against him? That's
for sure.
And so you've kind of persuaded me a little bit here, Pat.
He's the guy. Look, and look. The reason I sound people are going to say misogynist, patriarchal. You're right, but that's not because that's what I believe. That's because I'm taking a step back and looking what would be best for them to win this year, and that whether we like it or hate it plays a part. He's the guy. Now, you brought him up by name. I really would like to go, just to wrap up with, I'd really like to go and get your thoughts around Mr. Luxon's tweet. For people who haven't seen it yet, on behalf of the National Party, I offer to Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern our thanks for her service to New Zealand. She has given her all to this incredibly demanding job, and I wish her and her family all the very best for the future. Thank you, Jacinda. I mean, for a start, maybe I'm being a little bit facetious about the position. Thank you, Prime Minister. Might have been better at the end, maybe, just, the office. But anyway, I think that the rhetoric that I've heard from Christopher Luxon for the past 12 months has done nothing but add to those machetes that we talked about in the thing, that away from them. That just feels a little bit more than, what's the right word? Patronizing?
It is 99% weasel. When you say weasel, what we mean is that when a weasel gets at an egg, it sucks all the egg out of it, and all you've got left is a shell. And that's what's meant by this. The words are there, but there is nothing inside that shell. And it's meaningless because what he actually has done what he has failed to do by inaction is stop so many people who could have been discouraged from using invective that has landed us where we are. And he's all good with that, and that's not good. Not good.
Yeah, I really hope. I mean, you and I talked about this beforehand, and I've mentioned this. In fact, I've made a clip on it today talking about how shit House Labour is at their messaging. I hope that they get this right for the sake of people on the left, and they don't just, virtue signal what they think should be, as opposed to actually stop and think, how do you win? Because that's not what the left asks very well. The right goes, how do we win? The left goes, how do we make this world a better place? Which is a great thing, but if you don't win first, you can't make the world a better place. So Labour Party, if you're listening, how do we win? And as horrible as it is to sound, maybe some of the best and brightest that might be fantastic people in 3 years from now, if you want to win this year, aren't the people to go with. Just my humble opinion. That's all, David.
The cost of living right now, National Party have grasped. It really weighs on everybody's mind, and so that's why you hear so much about it. They have to find messaging for a starter that turns that around, because this is actually on the wealthy, the taking advantage of windfall profits, the taking advantage of healthy bottom lines. All of that could be changed. It would not be to the advantage of wealthy people, but it would be to the advantage of the hard-pressed Kiwi mum and dad that Christopher Luxon purports to be concerned about. So just for starters, the messaging of that, I think, could be flipped, and you need to whiteboard that for a day.
Yeah, no, look, we talked about this. We talked about this last night, and you and I talked about it before we came on. When National says we have the CEOs, the messaging from Labour is, yes, you can have the CEOs, we'll have the workers. That's actually where they need to be. They don't need to be, oh, no, the CEOs love us too. No, fuck that. The messaging is, yeah, you can have the top 10%. You can have the elites. You can have the Graham Harts giving you $250,000. We'll go see the workers on the factory floor who can't afford to give us anything, but we'll rally them, get their votes, and that's who we're fighting for. And if they don't get that right, I mean, that's the Labour of old, then they're doomed for eternity.
Actually, you scrolled past Michael Wood to get to Kieran McNulty, but he has been doing some pretty good messaging along those terms.
They're my two choices. Those are the two I came to. I was Kieran's number one, Michael's number two. And if Kieran says no, Michael's number two. But I think, honestly, especially in that provincial kind of cred, gumboot wearing ute. And look, it sounds horrible, but I understand messaging. That's what it is. He's the guy. He's the guy.
You're not wrong.
David Slack, tell the people about Subslack.
Oh, yes. Do please come and enjoy the daily newsletter called More Than a Fielding, which you can find at substack.substack.com. I write a snappy thing that comes out at 4:30 each day that looks at what's been going on. It's a kind of a look in the rear vision mirror to see what we've hit now and what's bouncing on the road behind us, you might say. But it's mostly about life here and politics in particular. I try not to make every issue about rail and bikes, but it contains both, and also quite a lot about our absolutely dysfunctional Ponzi scheme fucking property market. But there are all kinds of things, and also there's a whole bunch of nostalgia. And on Thursdays there's the school journal, the Thursday School Journal, where much of the action takes place at the fictional Kiakaha Primary School, where all kinds of cool people do interesting things.
There you go. People want to find out more about you. Subslack.substack.com. David, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'm very glad you're, shall we say, coming to the very tail end of your COVID, because we want you on again. We want to chat again. It's always fun. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Likewise, Pat. It's been a pleasure. Cheers, man.
All right, team. Thanks for being with us still through this evening of Summer Series Best of Big Hairy News during the summer break. I wanted to let you know as well that the BHN shop is still actually active right now. We have got a summer sale going on, bhnshop.nz. There's a bunch of Beardy Boy gears up there. There is t-shirts and there is caps as well. There are these very cool black on black t-shirts, and there's a limited number in there. As you can see here, the 4XL is sold out, but there's small, medium, large, XL and 2XL still available at the time of recording. There's also this very cool, of course, we're Otago, we had to go with the blue on yellow as well. There's a few of them, XLs, larges, mediums and smalls in there as well, and there's a bunch of caps as well if you're interested in those things. And what we're going to offer you is, until we come back live, which is at the end of January, we are offering a 25% off anything on the store. Just use the promo code SUMMER and you'll get 25% off anything. Now, At the time of recording this conversation, there was also one 5XL BHN hoodie remaining. Now, remember, last year the BHN hoodies had OB on the back, original beardy. Now, that doesn't come back in 2023, except for this one. It's 5XL. At the time of recording, there's only one available. It's on the store, and it's 25% off to match with what's happening with the rest of the summer sale. If it's not there now, maybe it's gone. Maybe you got it, or maybe it's still there and you want to go pick it out. It's just because we had one left over, one 5XL original beardy BHN black hoodie. If you want it and it's still there, go grab it at bhnshop.nz. Anywho, that's us. Let's continue with the summer series. This is Big Hairy News. There's some things in this conversation with baby boomer Kerre where she actually says something that I think are going to make your ears prick up with a little prediction you made at the end of last year about what's going to happen this year. So Kerre Woodham has put out a piece that basically says, this is an audio bit, National could be snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. And if it did, it would be one hell of an achievement. Let's play this for you. Chewy, throw your hand up or wave your hands around like you just don't care if you want to jump in at any stage. I'll probably pause it at some stage, but let's have a listen to Kerre Woodham's sort of analysis. It's funny, talking about motivated cognition, it's like Kerre Woodham is basically saying all these terrible things about Labour, and then like, so why is it National doing better? That's basically the summation of this. Let's have a listen. Oh, it's over here, isn't it?
9% of New Zealanders believe the country is on the wrong track. 42% believe it's going in the right direction. 77% of people feel poorly or not so good about the economy. 22% think it's good or excellent. And this is one of the largest gaps since the pandemic. And yet, National is only slightly ahead of Labour in the latest polls from Talbot Mills. They also run Labour's private political polling. In the
what's going on, Chewy? They're only slightly ahead. They should be smack. I mean, like, because financially I'm doing fantastically. They should be so much further ahead. What's going on here? I remember listening to Ricky Gervais he used to do the XFM radio show, which I still listen to sometimes on the internet. And they were talking about the financial crunch that was coming in the early 2000s. And Ricky Gervais goes, I don't get it. I'm doing really well. I've never been richer. And I kind of get that vibe, but not in a joking way from these sorts of people. It's like, it's just, I don't understand. Things are going so well. Yeah. For you, sweetheart.
Results, Te Pāti Māori would hold the balance of power when it came to forming a government. Get ready for another 3 years of a Labour Greens government, people. That is the joy of living in a democracy. How is it?
Don't you love it when right-wingers, like the right-wingers that stand up for democracy and stuff, when it doesn't work in their favour, they're like, oh, fucking democracy.
Yeah.
You know, what are we going to do about it?
That when even Labour knows they're stuffing things up and getting things wrong, hence the change of leader, hence the policy reset, there is still the potential for them.
Can I say this? You know who Isaac Butterfield is? Australian comedian.
Oh yes, yeah.
Fairly controversial. He's got a very good beard.
Yes. Yeah,
very good beard. Quite controversial. He did a bit the other day. I haven't seen it, but he was talking about how Jacinda Ardern, this is going around the internet at the moment, ran away, and ran out of gas and ran away from her job. I thought about trying to get a hold of him and just go, when you're on stage, if someone screams at you that you're a cunt for 60 straight minutes, you might eventually go, I've had enough, I'm getting off stage. Now, multiply that by about 20 million, and you might start to get to the point where I could imagine someone in public life actually being over it and wanting out. Now, I'm not naive enough to say that it's not more calculated than that, but just this idea of, why did she run away from it? I'm like, I don't think anyone has any idea. This is the first prime minister we've had that apparently is going to potentially need to have security for the rest of her life. That's what the Secret Service is saying, or the SIS is saying. I just don't think anyone quite gets it. And I thought about, a comedian on stage screaming at them to eventually they went, I've had enough, and they walk off stage. But if a leader does it, it's like, pathetic. What a lie. So no, maybe not. Maybe not. Anyway, that was referencing Kerre Woodham's thing about the Labour. They know they're doing wrong because they've changed leaders.
To get another 3 years. I know at News Talk ZB on this particular show, we're in our own little echo chamber here. But it can't be that Labour are doing things right. Even they know
Can't
they're
be.
not doing things right.
It can't be.
The poll says people are dissatisfied and worried about the economy.
Yeah.
But voters don't feel that National is the overwhelming answer. Matthew Hooton, writing in the Herald this morning, says National's nonchalance stems first from it not understanding just how badly Hipkins, Cepoloni, Robertson, Wood want to win a third term. They don't appreciate their hunger, their desperate desire to see things through, to get the policies they care about pushed through.
It's actually a really interesting commentary from Matthew Hooton, because what he's saying is we see, and I'll put my hand up, we see Labour sometimes as a bit of a soft bet, like they don't play politics well enough. But that description of Labour by Matthew Hooton means these guys are grizzled and hardened, and they're in it for the fight, which is a particularly interesting small observation from him.
Whenever Hooton pipes up, like, he's been so wrong so many times about his own party and the people that he backs. He threw in with Judith Collins, he threw in with Wayne Brown.
Was he Muller as well? He might have gone in with Todd Muller, mightn't he?
I'm not sure about that. But yeah, he just keeps on back and loses. At what point do you go, actually, he's a Labour Party plant?
Let's keep going.
They believe that they have to keep National out of power because of the damage that they believe the 1990s National Party did to families, communities, and childhoods.
Yes.
They remember that. They themselves were affected by it. And they remain convinced that the National of today is ready to re-emerge in the clothing of the National of the 1990s.
Well, I think the point that Kerre Woodham making there is fair, but I think the one addendum she's missing is she's saying Labour is convinced of that. It would appear that enough of the voting base is also convinced of that to be keeping it close at the moment. That's what I would say. This bloody democracy, psh. It seems that enough people, which is why and I haven't got the numbers tonight, but when we last looked at the trust numbers, that the trust numbers for Luxon were terrible. I think there's enough of the public who remember those days, who remember all the things that came off, all the user pays that came in, all that sort of stuff, that it's not just perhaps the Labour leadership who think that, but enough New Zealanders also think that warrant concern.
I think it's interesting because we've got two, I guess, like institutional memories, I guess, of that time, like the National Party of the 90s.
Yeah.
A lot of people remember that for all of those changes in policies. What was it? Euthanasia?
Yeah.
Just the absolute brutal cuts to social services.
Ruthonomics?
Rogernomics. That was Labour. And that's the other sort of institutional memory. The farming sector remembers that, and they blame Labour, and they still blame Labour for it.
Although, did you read I think in the weekend I bookmarked it somewhere, the head of Federated Farmers saying that the farmers have lost a friend in Jacinda? Did you read that?
What?
Yeah, I'll try and find
what?
it. I'll try and find it.
God. Has the Federated Farmers, I mean, they must have lost touch with a big segment. Well, not even a big segment, a loud segment of farming, though. Because groundswell came out of farmers that didn't feel that like they were being listened to by Federated Farmers.
There you go. Found it just like that because I am a genius. Federated Farmers President Andrew Hogarth believes the agriculture sector is losing a friend with the shock resignation of Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. So,
Jesus. Okay.
Just
you could have maybe cracked that one out a little bit earlier there, buddy.
All right, let's keep going with Kerry Boomer, whatever her name is. Woodham.
Matthew Hooton says too that National doesn't understand David Seymour's ACT Party,
Yeah,
and its
correct.
only credible coalition partner. If, and it seems likely, that Christopher Luxon can't get National above 40%. I've spent time with Christopher Luxon. He's come into the studio. He's taken calls from you.
She almost seems in pain, doesn't she?
All the answers. He's got all the figures. He's got all the detail.
He's got all the answers.
An impressive grasp of detail.
Impressive.
He's perfectly personable.
Yeah, yes.
But he's just not getting any cut through. I don't know what more he can do. He can't be somebody else.
Wait for it.
Somebody else could be the leader of the National Party, but I don't think that would work right now.
Oh, did you hear it, Chewy?
I did.
Did you hear it, Chewy?
I'm just saying.
Hang on. Stop. This is a little bit of your glory. So I'm leaving. And you can just, this is your prediction from last year. What would you like to add?
I am all a tither. I will be, and this is my other prediction here. I will be unbearable if I am correct on this. I will like a sun collapsing into a black hole. I will be overwhelmed by my own smugness if I get this right.
Yeah. All right.
Mark it on the calendar.
We'll keep going.
Especially after Labour has replaced its leader. It would look desperate, and it would be desperate. I think Hooten is right, though. The best opportunity to gain traction on Labour would be for National to form a working alliance with ACT. Work out what policies they can work together on, what a centre-right New Zealand would look like.
Centre-right, ACT
so
party.
Voters can decide whether that is the direction they want New Zealand to head in. We know where Labour wants to take us. We've seen an example of the sort of policies they would like to become set in stone in New Zealand's legislation. We know what Grant Robertson can and cannot do. So we have a good idea of what a Labour government looks like.
So this is where we go through the things like lowest unemployment, lower inflation than the rest of the OECD, all these good things. This is what Grant Robertson's all about. Is that what she means? Do you think that's what she means? Or do you think she means, they talk about gender too much? Do you think she might mean that? That might be more what they mean. I don't know.
I think they really do need to work together, Christopher Luxon and David Seymour, to show voters what a centre-right New Zealand would look like. More about the policies.
We know what it would look like.
No, we don't want any more empty rhetoric. We've had 5 years
That's all he's got.
of sloganeering and empty rhetoric.
Oh my God.
Little catchphrases that have become earworms for a generation of people.
There you go. That's enough. Speaking of earworms.
Man, she is so okay. I like to think that I don't like to think. I'm very aware that often I'm in my own lefty bubble. And at times that can just swing around and smack you in the face. Wow, that's gonna hit her like a fucking truck.
I used to work after Kerre Woodham. I don't have many nice things to say about her as a human being. I now want to see Labour win more than ever before, if for no other reason to stick it up. She sounds
divorced from reality.
Yeah,
I can get someone going, "Hey, look, Labour's not my cup of tea." There's some things in the last couple of years that I didn't agree with, but that's just that's unhinged Kool-Aid drinking there.
Yeah, well, look, she's not a very nice person in my opinion. And also, she's so disingenuous at the moment. And look, this is not just me talking. Chewy, there's some people I talk to in the radio industry about various things. Is that since she took over from Leighton Smith, and look, Leighton Smith, for all my disagreements with his politics, was the yardstick when it came to talkback. The best talkback host New Zealand's ever seen, without question. Kerre Woodham fills in, takes that slot over, and rather than forging her own path to where she would naturally sit politically, which I used to listen to in the evenings before I came on after her, she's basically just taken on a right-wing position to service Leighton's audience. It's also just real performative kind of radio and stuff as well, that it's and just real self-serving.